Alright, so welcome back here, ladies and gentlemen. And now that we have our model completely modeled, sculpted out, we did our retopology, we also have taken a look at doing our UVs, we're ready to go ahead and begin the process of texturing and normal mapping our almost said character there, our hat for TF. Now, Team Fortress 2 has a very specific style that you have to use. You can't necessarily use a normal map for every single model, simply because they just don't use them. They use normal maps sparingly in terms of bringing out that detail. So what that means is we want to go ahead and use our normal map and our ambient occlusion maps to go ahead and make our textures. So the easiest way to go ahead and do that is use a program, as you can see here, is like xNormal. I simply have exported our high-res geometry out of ZBrush, and have also exported our low-res geometry out of Maya with our UVs already attached to it, and we're ready to go ahead and bake out our normal maps. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm not necessarily going to bake them out because that can take especially at the resolution that I want to bake out at, it can take an excessive amount of time. So I'm going to spare you that, and then we'll just simply jump into Photoshop next and begin our texturing process. So let's just go ahead here and start with xNormal. And as you can see, I've clicked on the high definition meshes tab. If you just right click in here and add meshes, go to your desktop, add your high definition meshes. Instead of using the exported normals, we want to use the average normals for the high definition meshes. Same thing here for the low definition meshes, which is going to be your game res, low res topology. Come in here to the baking options. Just set this to your desktop or whatever, so that you can bake your normal maps and your ambient occlusion maps out. You can also go ahead here and set the resolution that you like, and you can see that I've originally baked out at a 4096 map, and this is fairly large in terms of baking them out, but that's the resolution that I like to paint on. But before we take this into TF2, we will go ahead and actually scale down the texture. I just want to paint on and edit on a very large image. This way I make sure that I'm getting that detail in there that I actually want in there, so that I don't have to like squint and really zoom in on the model to actually take a look and go ahead and paint on. So we, as you can see, have our normal map and our ambient occlusion maps checked here. I would just simply go ahead and hit generate maps, and this will go ahead and generate our maps for us. But since I've already gone ahead and done that, I'm just going to go ahead here and jump into Photoshop. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and pause the video real quick. And I just simply paused the video there so that I could close xNormal, and I didn't want to get any flickering or anything here. So as you can see, let's take a look at what we've actually been able to bake out here. And this is our normal map, and you can see that the detail that it captures is actually pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a look at our ambient occlusion map as well, and you can see that we have actually baked out a really good ambient occlusion map. Okay, so let's go ahead and take our UVs here, and we're just simply going to drag this onto our normal map. Okay, let me do that second time there, and we'll just go ahead and move this up, and we'll set this to this layer to screen just so I can see through those UVs fairly well. And I'll just turn it down a little bit here, not too much, just so that I can still see the detail on the normal map here. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and double click that normal map layer and desaturate this, just so that it's going to be black and white and still capture some of that detail in here. And I'm also going to take my ambient occlusion map here, just drag this onto what is going to be our hat texture. Okay, and just place this properly, and then we'll set this layer to multiply, and you can see where this is going to be somewhat dark, so we'll just have to adjust this a little bit here, just so that we get a little bit of a lightness killer here, and that's fine. So now I'm just going to go ahead here and just turn this off, just so I can see what I'm going to go ahead and do here. Okay, let me pause the video again real quick. Okay, so I just paused the video there so I could go ahead and bring in some images to go ahead and sample some colors from. They're just off screen. They're not anything that you really need to actually go ahead and see here. So let's go ahead and begin our texturing process, and let's come down here to the bottom and click the create new layer button, and we're going to rename this to our red. Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead here and actually start painting on our model. Now we first want to figure out what do we want to paint red. I'm going to go ahead and paint this section red and the bottom portion here red. For the top portion here, the main top portion is actually going to be yellow. Same with this little line here, and a couple of these are going to be red. So let's just go ahead and draw out the actual polygon pieces that we're going to need for our red here. And I'm zooming in so that I can see where I'm going to need to actually go ahead and draw out our polygonal lasso. So we'll just go ahead and select our tool here and simply just start drawing out, just so I can, you know, paint in areas where I need them to be red, and so I'm not actually painting on the entire model here. So we'll just go ahead here and just try and paint this out here, and I'm just, you know, hitting the space bar so I can pan over a little bit there, and we'll just try and line this out perfectly here. This is definitely an area where you don't necessarily want to rush through. You definitely want to go ahead and take your time here, just so that, you know, you get these meshes out properly. So let's go ahead and maybe paint this there. Oops, and you can see where I actually selected that, so that it would go ahead and end the thing here. So we'll just go ahead and redraw this real quick. And that's okay. We just want to be careful of how we go ahead and draw this out. Like I said there, and you saw that actually ended the polygonal lasso. So we just need to sort of be careful of how we actually go ahead and draw this out. Just making sure that we're trying to stay on that line as close as we possibly can. And I'm not really going to try and rush through this, but I'm going to, you know, try to get this done in a time frame so that you guys can understand it, how we're actually going to go ahead and texture this properly. And I want to make sure that we're going to be able to go ahead and get this in the engine as well inside of this tutorial without actually having to make this a two-part tutorial. And I'm going to show you the easiest way of actually getting it into engine instead of, you know, doing your own manual compiling, which is what a lot of people tend to actually go ahead and do. Okay, so now let's come down here and just try and jump to where we want to draw it on this other piece here. And that's okay. I'll just go ahead and jump back there again. I can't believe I've done that twice. That's okay. It just takes a little bit of time to make sure that you don't actually double click. You're only going to single click, because if you double click, that's going to end the polygonal lasso tool. Okay, so we just need to continually draw here. Just making sure that I go ahead and single click instead of double clicking each one. Now that I'm aware I have actually done that twice. Just trying to, like I said, you can see where our ambient occlusion line is here. Okay. I'm just trying to line that up properly. And like I said, it makes it much easier if you paint on a higher resolution map rather than a 256 by 256 map. I mean, that way if you paint on something that's that small, it's gonna, let's just say, be very hard on the eyes, and you don't really have to focus in too much. Okay, so we have that portion masked out. Let's go ahead and grab our paintbrush here, and I'm just going to sample a color from an image that I'm looking at, and we'll go ahead and actually paint this blue. So I'll just paint it, and then I'll rechange the name to blue, or rechange the name to blue there, as you can see there. Okay, so we'll just come in here and just double select this and we'll call this blue. Okay, we'll go ahead and create a new layer here. Grab our polygonal lasso tool again, and we're going to go ahead here and just draw out here for the top. This first one is going to be red, and that second one's white, so we're basically going to skip red, white, red, white, red, white, so it looks very similar to what a barber cone would be, or a barber pole here. Let's come up here and, I mean, we can always paint a little bit extra. I mean, there's really no problem there. Okay, so we just need to make sure that we deselect first before we actually draw out there. I can't believe I did that again. No big deal. Just trying to line this up properly. Just making sure that we get this, you know, basically where the insets of the shadows are here. Just making sure that we're not going to leave any ambient occlusion white out. Okay, so we'll just hit enter to end that, and we'll just, you know, hold down shift and draw out our second one here. Okay, so we'll draw this out as red as well. And it just takes a little bit of time and patience to go ahead and get this all drawn out properly here. Okay, so we'll move over again, draw out our third one here. Just trying to make sure that I stay on that line fairly well. It's definitely a little bit more challenging than say doing a feature film animation mesh, because this is, you know, fairly low in terms of geometry, and the topology isn't necessarily, you know, high res, and it's not completely laid out the way that, you know, say an animation mesh would be. So let's go ahead over here and draw out our last red piece here for this top portion, and we'll just go ahead and draw that last one there. Come over on the bottom, come up this last edge here. Okay, so then we'll come down here and basically block out the bottom here. Same process, just hold down shift to go ahead and draw out what is going to be the red part here. Just want to make sure that I sort of draw it on the bottom portion as much as I can for this blue, so that we don't necessarily take away from that blue at all. Maybe a little bit, but not too much, because I'm going to actually go ahead and probably apply a Gaussian blur to it, which is going to soften the color a little bit. And I'm basically just going to use base colors here to go ahead and create my texture. So we'll go ahead and end that. Okay, so now that we have that completely masked out, we'll go ahead and grab our paintbrush. We'll go ahead and sample a red, and we'll go ahead and paint here. And you can see where we can just simply, you know, paint this fairly quickly. Just making sure that we fill those, you know, boxes completely in there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and just make sure we deselect everything, and you can see where there's a little bit of white in here as well, and that's okay, because I'm going to go ahead and I can go ahead and actually repaint over that. Okay, so let's go ahead and mask out for our white, which is the easiest part's probably going to be just merge those two. Okay, and you can see where it's going to select everything there. Or you can go ahead and redraw out for what is going to be your white, and you can just, you know, simply just go ahead and draw out if you want, which is probably going to be the smartest solution here. So we'll just go ahead and draw out for our white here, just making sure that we try not to select anything that we don't want, because I also want to go ahead and add those stars as a white texture as well. And basically, you know, with TF, all you really need to do is just simply use, you know, base colors, and we'll just use, you know, take advantage of our filter gallery inside of Photoshop to actually add a lot of effects to it, whether it be angled strokes, paint daubs, and diffuse glows and whatnot. And so that'll give us the ability to really, you know, add some pretty cool texture effects to our model in our UV map here. Let's go ahead and just try to draw this out decently here. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw out this last one, and then we'll go ahead and do the stars as well. And you can see that I'm drawing this just a tiny bit larger than what the UV map is. I would say that it's more like, you know, 1 pixel or something larger. You don't want to do too much, because if you do it too much, then it's going to sort of, let's just say, get a little complicated. So let's go ahead and create a new layer, call this white. Okay, let's come down here and try and mask out our stars. Okay, so come up here. Basically just mask out where our stars are going to be here. Just drawing out the, you can see where like the outline and stuff is. So let's come up here and just make sure that we close that. Just move over to the second one. Make sure that I hold down shift to actually be able to draw out our second one here. And we'll go ahead and just finish tracing this. Go ahead and hit enter there so that we can get that shape finished out. Draw this third one here. Making sure that I get that corner properly. And you can see where this just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience to get these all, you know, drawn out correctly and placed in a way that we going to be easy to actually go ahead and texture for ourselves. You really want to make it as easy as possible as you can on yourself, because in the end, if it's, you know, if it's hard on yourself, then, you know, what's the point in doing it? You want to make it as easy as you can on yourself. So let's go ahead and draw the last half of this star here. You can see where the UV map isn't necessarily merged there, and that's not really a problem. I can go ahead and edit it, you know, if I need inside of Maya, but our texture is going to be fine here. So okay, let's go ahead and grab our paintbrush, make sure that we have our white layer selected, sample our color, and I don't want to make it pure white, I want to make it a little bit gray, so whenever I overlay it, it's actually going to give me a better effect. Okay, so we'll go ahead and paint all that out white, or whitish. Okay, making sure that we turn our red and blue layer back on. And I mean, if anything, it's probably me, but this looks, you know, more like, or reminds me more like Rocky IV, where Apollo Creed's actually wearing that hat. So let's go ahead and create one more layer here. We're going to call this yellow, and we'll give this just go ahead and quick draw out for this as well, just making sure that we try to, you know, stay within inside our wireframe here. So let's go ahead and just draw this out, just making sure I'll hit enter just to make sure that I can, you know, get that all completely off there. So we'll just go ahead here and draw this out real quick. And we'll just go ahead and move over. Continue to draw it out. I want to try to match that red a little bit better and stay with inside that line there, and you can see where that's going to be a little bit time consuming. So let's just go ahead here and draw out this top one first. Okay, so we'll go ahead and make sure that that's filled, and we'll go ahead here and grab a yellow, which I really want a gold, so let's just go ahead and sample a color here. And we'll grab our paintbrush and we'll just go ahead and sample a color, and we'll paint this yellow. Okay, just deselect here, grab our polygonal lasso tool here again, draw it for the last one. Just making sure that, you know, I don't double click or anything, and that'll be fine. So let's just go ahead and move over a little bit. Just making sure that we try to draw this out in a way that's, you know, pretty nice here. Go ahead and move over again. Trying to stay with inside that red is, you know, a little difficult, but it's okay. You should be able to manage. Just going to go ahead here and try to get the last of this placed out, and you can see where I'm definitely drawing outside of the UVs a little bit, but like I said earlier, I mean, I'm only doing that just to make sure that I have the correct placement. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hit enter to close that. Just reselect our paint tool, go ahead and paint this out. And you can see where that's really going to be like TF gold whenever I go to overlay that. So I want to go ahead here and select the white, making sure that I paint on the white layer to go ahead and paint over what is going to be the inside portion of our hat, what's actually going to be sitting on top of his head. Okay, so we'll go ahead and deselect here and start playing with some of our layer effects. Go ahead and turn our wireframe off. Select our layer 3, which is our reddish blue, or we can call it Americana or whatever. So we'll go ahead and just play with our layer effects real quick. This is definitely too light. This is probably going to be too vivid. This might actually be good. And I'm just, you know, taking a look to see what's actually going to work here. Because I sort of want to make it a little bit glossy. That's probably too much there. Okay, so let's go ahead with the multiply. Do the same thing here for the white. Just set it to multiplier. We can, you know, go ahead and run through the effects here. Just seeing what kind of effect that this is actually going to give us. This white actually looks pretty good, so, you know, set your white layer to a hard light. Let's go ahead and take a look at our yellow. The darken one there is probably going to be a little bit too dark. Okay, so let's just go ahead and try and adjust these a little bit. That linear burn is probably going to be a little bit better. So let's go ahead and save this out just to see what this looks like inside of Maya. So we'll go just call this hat texture for a quickie. I'm going to go ahead and change the name a little bit later on, or before I actually import it into TF, just so that I know exactly what it goes with. Okay, so we'll go with that in there. Go ahead and open up my Maya here, And I'm just going to use a blend shader to go ahead and apply this to the model. Okay, so we'll go into our project folder here, grab our image, go ahead and bring in our hat texture, and also our normal map, because I want to go ahead and make sure that our normal map and texture are actually reacting correctly in the way that I want. So we'll just set the hat texture into that blend as the color swatch, set our bump map in there, make sure we change it to tangent space normals. Go ahead, select our hat, apply our shader, hit 6 so that we can see our color, and that's actually looking fairly decent, but you can see where the head geometry is actually poking through, so we're going to need to go ahead and adjust this a little bit here, and that's fine. Here on the back you can see where this is poking through just a touch, not too much. Okay, so we'll go ahead here and just make sure that there's no more geometry actually coming through, and that's actually looking fairly decent here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one that's actually poking through a little bit as well, so let's go ahead and set that. Just make sure that we go ahead here and soften our edges, and you can see here where that's actually fairly good. Okay, so let's jump back here to Photoshop, and we're going to go ahead here and reopen our ambient occlusion map, one of our original ones. Okay, come over here to our filter gallery, and let me go over here so that you can actually see what we're going to go ahead and do. Is we're going to leave this on smudge stick, just adjust the highlights a little bit in the intensity so that we can really see, you know, those strokes in there. And then we'll simply just take our drag tool, we'll drag that onto our texture. Okay, place it properly and make sure that this is actually at the top of the stack, because if it's not, then it's not necessarily going to react and work the way that we want it to. Okay, and if I go ahead and zoom in here, whenever I go to play with the effect lines here, you can see where we get a very decent turnout in terms of what's actually going to, you know, affecting our texture. And that's typically the layout that I tend to use. And if we actually go ahead and turn back on our ambient occlusion, you can see where our texture actually looks, you know, fairly nice and pretty decent in terms of what it's going to look like inside of the actual engine. So I'm going to call it an end for this lesson. I'm definitely probably going to be painting a little bit more once I go ahead and pause this or stop this video. But in the next lesson, I'll show you the process that I use to go ahead and actually take the model from Maya into the Team Fortress 2 in the Steam engine. So come on back and continue watching.